Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and our family of broadcast affiliates right across Canada, the United States, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. Nancy Buck, who is a renowned developmental psychologist, international speaker, Psychology Today blogger, and author of Why Do Kids Act That Way? As the founder and president of Peaceful Parenting, Inc., she has dedicated her career to helping adults better understand children, what drives them, and how to guide them. Dr. Buck has worked with families around the globe to reduce conflict and create peaceful, happy homes. Her website, www.peacefulparenting.com. And Dr. Buck, welcome to the X-Zone.
I'm happy to join you.
First of all, Doctor, let me ask you, what is peaceful parenting?
Well, peaceful parenting is a point of view, among other things. And mostly what I teach parents is how to remain peaceful no matter what's going on with your children and among your children and between you and your children. So it doesn't mean that there's calm and harmony in the family all the time. I'm not sure that's actually possible. But what it does mean is when you're in conflict or when there's conflict in the family, you as the parent can approach your child in a peaceful way.
You know, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, and when there's peace and harmony in the home, something is wrong.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, no, but I would like to ask you one question before we go to the commercial break. How has today's technology either helped or hindered parenting?
Yeah, it's really an interesting question because there are many parents who do talk to me about their concern that their children have so much available to them in terms of technology that was never available to the parent and certainly to the grandparent. So one of the things that I try to point out to parents is what is new and amazing to you is ordinary to our children. So, for instance, what was available to us when we were children was extraordinary and amazing to our parents, the grandparents, and so on. There's actually an editorial written in a newspaper column where someone was complaining that the problem with American families today was that there was so much technology, it was really pulling families apart. The part that's interesting about that particular editorial, it was written in the 1800s, so that the complaint hasn't really changed. It's just that the technology is ever expanding and ever extraordinary, and we as the parents certainly need to do everything we can to inform ourselves and inform our children and to keep them protected and teach them how to be protected. But that does not mean to try to keep our kids from being involved in technology, because they won't not be involved. What they may do is not tell us about how they're involved, and now you have a kid who really is in more jeopardy.
You know, we're hearing more and more stories, horror stories, about what is happening to children who use the social media. When we come back from this commercial break, Doctor, I'd like to ask you a few questions about children and the social media, and should social media be more responsible than it presently is? X-Zone Nation, our guest this hour is Dr. Nancy Buck. Her website is www.peacefulparenting.com. She is the author of Why Do Kids Act That Way? And the good doctor and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X-Zone continues. We're right here from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll free. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradio.
This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at www.drgibbswilliams.com.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony. A greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
Dr. Nancy Buck is our special guest this hour. She's the author of Why Do Kids Act That Way? And before we went to the break, Doctor, I asked you the question: should social media be more responsible than they are and take more responsibility, especially with the stories that we're hearing about online predators and how the kids themselves are not being very honest with the social media companies? Kids of 13 and 14 are signing on to these social medias where they have to be 18.
It's a great question. It's a hard question and doesn't have one simple answer. But I can at least talk to you a little bit about some ideas and some pointers. So let me just say that I think that the social media can take a certain amount of responsibility, but they can't actually come into your home to find out that the child who says that they're 18, in fact, is not 18. And then, even then, let's imagine that the social media was doing something that they thought was responsible. Would all parents agree? And I want to suggest to you that to get all parents to agree to whatever it is that the network might do would be an impossible task.
That's right.
Many parents have many different ideas. So the person who I think, or the people who I think are really responsible, are the parents, and the parents interacting with their children, which actually, let me also explain to you, goes to the very heart of one of the things I talk about in peaceful parenting, and that is before the child was ever born, before parents ever became parents, already they were in conflict with their children. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. Every parent I've ever met, and as I've had the good fortune, as you read, to meet lots of parents from literally all over the world, every parent has the same wish and dream for our kids. We want them to grow up to be happy, healthy, responsible people contributing to the world who like us enough to come home and visit on occasion or let us go visit them. But inside of that hope, there's another hope. We want our children to live, to grow up. So I want to suggest to you that every single decision that a parent makes, or maybe 99.9% of the decision parents make, it's really based on the parent's desire to keep their children safe and alive. Now, children enter the world, and the last thing they're worried about is being safe. They're driven by their curiosity, by their need to have fun, by their need for discovery. So they want to jump in every puddle. They want to roll down every hill. They want to jump into every moving vehicle. They want to get into every empty box, etc., etc., etc. So here we are, the parents, trying to hold our children close to keep them safe, and children are trying to break free. Now, that's an inherent conflict between parent and child, and you can't do anything to make it go away. It's just part of what happens. However, our job as parents is to teach our children how to be safe while we honor their curiosity to go out and explore the world. So now let's take that a few steps further and talk about children engaging in their curiosity and their drive for connection while being online and connecting on the social media. So our job is to work with our children to teach our children how to be safe even while they're online. Now, we can't necessarily hover over them and be sure that everything that they're doing is to our approval. And again, we get more worried than perhaps we need to. But if so our job is to figure out how to negotiate with our kids, making sure our kids are safe, with the understanding that there's going to come a time in their lives and our lives with them where they're going to push that and want to go a little further than we want them to go, and they may go a little further than they want to tell us about. So our job is to maintain a loving, connected relationship with our children so that when they make a mistake, when they find that perhaps the mistake they've made is more than they can handle by themselves, they will come to us and they'll be able to get help from us. So that's the big picture answer to your question. And it's not an easy question. It absolutely is not.
As a professional, who deals with children and families, do you think children of any age should be able to just carry cell phones and have the ability to text whether they're at home? Well, if they're at home, that's one thing, but in school?
Yeah, it's a really hard question because having our children have cell phones is a huge advantage these days. When my children were young, I had to, when they went someplace, I had to trust that they were there, and if I wanted to get in touch with them, I had to call the family home and find out that they were there and hope that they were there. Now, children have, at many ages, have cell phones, and they're able to stay connected with their parents. And in fact, there's some, which I don't necessarily advocate, but there's some spyware that parents can find out if in fact, their kids are going where they want their kids to go, that they can connect onto their children's cell phones. Again, that just, to me, speaks to the issue of parents being very frightened and wanting to keep their children safe.
But isn't this keeping the child tied to the mother's or father's umbilical cord longer than it's necessary?
Well, so yes, there are some who are and there's some who aren't. Again, part of the challenge of raising children is that you can't come up with one answer for all children. For some children, age 7 is not too young for them to have a cell phone. For other children, that's ridiculous. They're way too young at age 7. For some children, to stay connected with their parents until they're 12 and a half may be what they need to do because they're not necessarily feeling safe on their own. They're not necessarily mature. But for some kids, that's ridiculous. By age 12, they're babysitting their younger brothers and sisters. So there isn't an answer. The answer is knowing your kid and then knowing yourself. Part of what we need to do as parents is to make sure that we're not meeting our needs at the expense of our children.
One of the biggest arguments that is still on the lips of many people is spanking child abuse? And I have to ask you this, since you deal with this, what is the harm in spanking?
Well, actually, I'm happy to have you ask me that question today because there's a fair bit of research actually out that wasn't available even 6 months ago that talks about the brain damage that's done to children when they experience a certain level of trauma. And for some children, spanking is trauma. Now, parents often say to me, oh, I was spanked. It didn't ruin my life. And I understand that. But I would also say we're not living in the same day and age that our parents were raising us.
Well, what are we in a pansy society now? Are we in a pansy society where, the kids can say, oh, don't hit me because it's going to give me brain damage? I can understand,
I can understand children
that.
aren't that smart. But what I can say to you is it's a little like using a rotary landline. You don't need to anymore. There's better science. There's better evidence-based research that tells you that there's a better way. Now, here's the question that I ask parents. What is it that you want, that you're trying to get by spanking your children? And usually the answer is they want their children to learn. They want their children to really understand the seriousness of what it is that the child has done that's wrong, or they want to get the child's attention. And then my next question to them is if I can show you another way to accomplish all of those without ever having to spank your child, are you interested in at least having the conversation to talk about it? Because I want to bring people into the age where they're using the cell phone, not the rotary landline anymore, in raising their children.
But when we look at the crime rate, when we look at the state the world is in, aren't we giving technology way too much leniency? Aren't we giving our kids way too much leniency? We're spoiling the child.
Perhaps, but I'd say to you is, if statistically, if you looked at the people who were in jail and you looked at the people who were out of jail, it's more likely that the people who were in jail were spanked than the ones who were out of jail.
Oh, you're talking to a former police officer here, ma'am, and I disagree with you 100%.
Oh, do you? Okay, tell me.
Because I've seen it where the rich kids, the kids who are spoiled rotten, turn out to be worse than the kids who have nothing.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about permissive parenting. I'm not talking about letting the kid do whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want. That's certainly not what I'm talking about. Children absolutely need to have boundaries. They don't feel safe if they don't have boundaries. They need to know where the limit is. But I would also say to you that when a parent is spanking, they're looking at the behavior as if the behavior is the problem. And what I know is that from a child's perspective, their behavior is never their problem. They just didn't know another way to get what they wanted. And if I can teach them another way that's responsible and respectful, children are willing to learn it.
Well, if a child doesn't get money from his parents, the child will. Let's use this analogy: if the child wants something, goes to mom and dad, and they want a pair of $150 shoes, and the parents say, "No, I'm sorry, we can't right now," and the child goes into the store and steals it. Isn't that exactly what we're saying? That the child will find another way?
But let's back it up. If my child wanted something for $150 and I either didn't want them to have it or I didn't have a spare $150, what I would say is, I don't have that money, but let's make a plan for how you can get the money and get what it is you want. You don't necessarily just say no and that's the end of it. What is it that the kiddo wants? And if the kid wants outrageous sneakers and they're willing to work hard to earn the $150, okay, good for them. More power to them. I'm not going to turn over the $150 to my child, but I don't necessarily just say no out of hand. Now, I will tell you, when my children were 14 and wanted to drive the car, I absolutely said no, but I didn't say no forever. I said, how old are you? 14. How old do you have to be to drive in the state we were living in? 17. Actually, it was 16. I said, so it would be against the law for you to drive. No, you can't drive. You can't drive until you're 16. Well, their friend Nat, who lived on a farm, could drive. Yeah. I said, good for Nat. He lives on a farm. You don't. You can't. So it doesn't mean that you always say yes all the time.
All right, Doctor, stand by. We've got to take our commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, Dr. Nancy Buck is our guest. www.peacefulparent. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Exonation, Dr. Nancy Buck is our guest. She is a renowned developmental psychologist, international speaker, Psychology Today blogger, and author of Why Do Kids Act That Way? And if you'd like more information on Dr. Buck, or if you'd like to find out how to get a copy of her book, Why Do Kids Act That Way?, her website is www.peacefulparenting.com. You know, Doctor, it seems that years ago, kids didn't have the ability to get into so much trouble as they have these days. For example, when we were going to school, they didn't have metal detectors. They didn't have police officers in the halls. They didn't have shootings in the schools. Like something's got to be totally different from when we were kids to the latitude that the kids today are given.
Actually, I obviously have a different point of view. I do think that the world has become more violent, and our children are a reflection of what's happening in the world.
Well, sure. Just look at the games they're playing on the computer, on the Wii games.
Right.
Come on. We as parents are allowing kids to get away with too much, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, my point of view is different. My point of view is not that we're allowing, but that we perhaps may not be giving them as much guidance and interaction and support as might be useful and helpful for them.
But there's a lot of social and peer pressure on kids today that there wasn't 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Really?
Really?
That's not my personal experience. There was plenty of peer pressure on me growing up. And I'm actually several generations ago, but that's okay. I mean, it's just different experiences. But there was certainly the temptation of drugs and alcohol and cigarettes and cutting class and cutting school and making bad choices. That's always been around. That's not new.
But you also didn't have mom and dad that were both working, plunk their kids in front of a TV and used the electronic technology of today as babysitters either.
I do agree with you that there are probably there is a fair amount of lack of interaction. One of the complaints is that children who are so engaged in the screen relationship but not in the actual human relationship may be leading to interesting things a few generations off. But I would also suggest it's not just the kids. It's also parents who are relying on setting their children in front of some kind of screen as a babysitter. I absolutely agree with you on that one.
Plus look at the educational status these days. Kids, the high school graduation rates aren't as high, and if they are high, it's because the school system just wants to push the kids through. They really don't care if they read, write, or can count.
Again, my point of view is slightly different, although I do agree with you that the school systems are under tremendous pressure. They're under tremendous strain. Here in the United States, it's all about the test scores. And one of the reasons that teachers are doing perhaps less than an effective job is because they're intimidated and fearful that if they don't make kids reach a certain test score, they're going to lose their jobs. And nobody is interested in going to school to learn how to pass a test. Nobody. No teacher is interested in doing that. No child is interested in doing that. It kills learning.
Plus, this is my experience. Children do not have the respect for their teachers like they used to have. Teachers like to be called their first name. There's no school codes, dress codes. There's no discipline. Like it's a free-for-all.
Okay, so that may be different from my experience. I do have the similar experience that the teachers are frustrated that they're not able to get the same level of respect that they used to. They used to believe that
they deserved.
Teachers got at some point in time. My experience growing up with a professional educator was not that. That parents were out to lynch teachers and lower their taxes. And that was 45, 50 years ago.
It seems that society is catering way too much to the children and not setting the standard of where children actually should be. Children are being treated as adults. Children are being treated as friends by their parents instead of kids are kids.
I do believe that kids are kids, and I do believe that there are some parents who are frustrated because they don't feel as if they have enough time with their children. And so one of the things they do to try to make up for it, and that includes families that aren't in the original unit. So part of what they do to compensate for their guilt is to perhaps overindulge and not provide any structure, any boundaries, and that's pretty much a disaster.
Sure.
For everybody. That's a recipe for not happy things happening in a home.
And what happens is the child is then dependent on society to give them the structure that they need, and this is where children go bad.
There's a whole lot, though, Rob, that there are a percentage of those children. I'm not going to argue with you about that. I'm not going to disagree with you about that. But there's the vast majority of children. That's not true. The vast majority, you're really talking about 5%. Now, again, 5% when you have the numbers that we have, that's a lot of people.
All right, if it was only 5%,
95% are not falling off the cliff like that.
Okay, if it's only 5%, why do schools have metal detectors? Why do schools have police officers roaming the halls?
Well,
why is bullying on an increase? Cyberbullying, physical bullying. Why are kids committing suicide at a staggering rate?
My point of view is that the reason that's true for children is because it's true for adults. That the bullying that occurs in school is not just child to child. It's adult to child. It's adult to adult. It's parents to school. There's bullying going on throughout our society. Children happen to be the ones that we focus on because they don't have as much power or clout to say, you know what, my teacher's bullying me. And I'm just trying to stand up for myself here.
I've never heard of a child complaining that they're being bullied by their teacher.
No, because it's not called that.
What's it called?
But when a teacher intimidates, when a teacher threatens, when a teacher coerces a child, that's bullying.
You mean when a teacher tries to get the child to learn something and the child is hard-headed, and because at home they're treated with kid gloves and they come into a different social surrounding where they have to pull their weight and they don't like the way they're being talked to? Oh, geez, isn't that too bad? Suck it up, Nancy. Get with the plan.
You've combined a bunch of things there that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But there certainly are plenty of teachers, but there's plenty of people in the world who are attempting to control other people by using external control. And it doesn't work. I mean, ultimately, the greatest external control or bullying is called war. And usually wars end before everybody is dead. Now, sometimes it ends because the strongest people prevail and the weaker people, the people who are losing, give up. But sometimes it ends when both sides to sit down and negotiate for a peace. that's the ultimate bullying, if that's the word you want to use. But it's the ultimate external control. And really, Rob, the reason I'm here talking with you is that I have better news. I have better ways. We don't have to resort to that kind of extreme.
All right. So
and it doesn't. And the extreme also doesn't go to coddling, and it doesn't go to kid gloves, and it doesn't go to giving up and lying down and let your children walk all over you. That's certainly not what I'm about at all.
What are you about, Doctor? Tell me about your way.
Understanding that children's behavior is never the problem. Children, if they had the language, they would use words. But because they don't have the language, what their language is in their behavior. So when a child misbehaves, we need to understand that that child is trying to say to us, there's something that I want and need, and I don't know how to get it any other way than misbehaving.
Now, there's a big difference between a want and a need.
Okay. At the same time, they don't necessarily, yes, and that's part of what we do, but that's the more subtle piece of where we're going to go. But when children are babies, the part that's really interesting is when a baby cries, and I'm talking about infant babies, rarely do people say, occasionally there are some, but rarely do people say, oh, that spoiled brat, he's just trying to ruin my evening. What we say is, what is it that you want, baby? And I remember clearly saying to my children, I wish you could talk to tell me what you want. Now when they get older and they cry, or they have a temper tantrum, or they have an outburst, or as a teenager would go off in a huff, it's exactly the same thing. We need to understand that child is behaving the way the child is behaving because there's something that the child needs, there's something that the child wants, and they don't know how to get it any other way. And our job is to teach them how to get it, but not just give in and let them get whatever they want. Teach them how to get it in a responsible and respectful way. That's what I'm about.
All right, so I would imagine the entire, if we were to put the entire concept into a peanut shell, is that we need to communicate better with our kids.
And we need to understand that from the child's perspective, you as parents were very clear. You actually spent a long time clearly articulating what it is that the adults want. But rarely did we spend any time talking about what children want and what children need. And so all I'm suggesting is we need to combine the two. That if you talk to anybody in prison or anybody in school or anybody in a family and say to the kiddo, if I can help you figure out how to get the toy without beating your brother up, are you interested in working it out? And the child's going to say yes almost every single time. But they don't know that's what they want. They just grab the toy because they don't know any other way to get it.
All right, so how would you deal with a child that is from a split family, that both mom and dad are vying for the child's attention, and both parents will do anything the child wants without any ifs, ands, or buts? How do we work
first thing
that?
I'm going to do is talk to them about, do you want a happy child? And then who's going to say no to that? No, I want an unhappy child. And then I'll ask, do you think you have a happy child now? And the answer almost always is no. When a child has no boundaries, even though it looks like this kid is living in luxury, being able to manipulate both mom and dad, ultimately that child is not a happy child. So then what I do is teach them that all children have a basic need for safety, and that our job as their parents is to provide safety. And how we do that is to provide the boundaries.
But in order for this to work, don't both parents have to be on the bandwagon?
It works better if they both do, but the reality is they don't both have to. If only one is doing it, the kids are incredibly flexible. They know whether they come from a broken home or not. They know if they go to Nana's house, Nana's going to let you get away with murder. And if they go to Aunt Minnie's house, she won't let you sneeze without getting into trouble with her. Kids are very smart. They have to be. It's for survival, being able to figure out how to be differently with different people.
So what's the difference about a smart child and a manipulative child then?
That's a great question. And a smart child is a child who lets you think that you're getting what you want while the child's also getting what they want.
Exactly.
And a manipulative child is trying to get something from you that you don't want the kid to get. It's only based on your point of view that makes the difference.
Quick question for you. Quick question for you here, Doctor. Do you believe in prescribing Ritalin for children?
So I have my own personal, very strong opinions about the whole issue of drugs, drugging our children. And I can tell you, my bottom line is I'm not a fan.
No, neither
However,
am
and the research that's out now is really, it's heart-wrenching. And the medicine that children are being prescribed, Ritalin and beyond, many of it, much of it, has not been tested on children. So we don't even know what the short-term and long-term effects and side effects are. However, I'm not a physician. It's not my job to diagnose. It's not my job to prescribe. But what I do in working with parents who have a kid who has been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD and also has been recommended that the child take some kind of medication, I still work with them about better understanding the children's behavior, the purpose of behavior, and how to help that child learn how to have responsible and respectful behaviors to help the child get what it is he wants without interfering with anybody else getting what it is that they want.
Where did ADHD and all the other terms come from? Once again, 20 years ago, it was unheard of.
Well, and the one that's actually, I would say to you is even more of a scandal, literally, I'll use that word, is bipolar disorder. Back a million years ago when I was working as a psychiatric nurse, and we would have our team meetings, and they would do a diagnostic differential, and they would determine whether or not this person had manic depression at the time. And if the person was younger than 19, it wouldn't even be considered that they had manic depression because it didn't start until early 20s. Now, we have 4-year-olds who are being diagnosed with bipolar. It's pretty scary. It's actually quite scandalous what's happening. And what I would say to you is that there's a whole medicalization of lack of understanding about children's behavior. That's where it comes from.
Stand by, Doctor. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation Dr. Nancy S. Buck is our special guest.
As host of Dialogue with Divinity, I am thrilled to join the X-Zone Broadcast Network and their growing number of affiliates. My quest for a connection to the divine ignited my successful career path as an international spiritual counselor for over 40 years, an author of 4 books, and well-known metaphysical educator. My clients call me their spiritual mama. So my job is to offer you a radio show to help you grow spiritually with wisdom and get specific tools from guests who are experts in their field. Tune in to Dialogue with Divinity and be part of the conversation with Spirit. My goal, your happy soul. For more information, please visit my website at johannacarroll.com.
Coming soon to the X-Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. Exonation, Dr. Nancy S. Buck is our special guest. Once again, her website is www.peacefulparenting.com, and Dr. Buck is the author of Why Do Kids Act That Way? What is the biggest tip you can share to help parents become peaceful parents, Doctor?
Well, probably it's a combination of two things. And parents already know this. But the one is that children have a huge need. It's a basic need they're genetically born with. They have a huge need for fun. And in fact, parents, you know that because children will have fun at the most inappropriate times and the most inappropriate places. But they just have a huge need for fun. And so really, it's our secret weapon, although I don't like to use weapons with peaceful parenting. But if there's something you want your child to do and the child doesn't want to do it, figure out how to make it fun, and they won't be able to resist. Now, you may not be a person who is creative enough to come up with a lot of good games, but your children do. So turn it over to them and say, look, we have to do this chore, and it's kind of a drag. Let's see if we can't figure out a way to make this more fun, and kids will do it. But I do have to give a warning for those of you who are living with teenagers. One of the things teenagers do for fun is to let their parents know that they're no fun. So when you say we're going to have fun, they'll make a lot of drama and make sure that you know that they think this is the stupidest thing they've ever done. And if you cannot treat teenage years as if that's something pathological, but kind of ask them to go along with it just to give you a break. What you might find out when they're 30 is that they thought it was really a fun game. They just didn't want to tell you. But that's that tip. And then the other one is just to remember every day that your child is extraordinary and precious, and you're a gift, and you are the gift to your child. And see if you can have at least one moment during the course of the day where there's a special sense of connection and love between you.
Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Please let our listeners know how they can find out more about peaceful parenting and where they can get a copy of your book.
Well, I would invite anyone who's interested in what I was talking about this last hour with you to visit my website, peacefulparenting.com. There they can get all sorts of information, including signing up for a free monthly newsletter. If they sign up for the free newsletter, they'll get a report for the guaranteed successful way of raising your children. And they can also order my book. Actually, I have two books. And more on my website, peacefulparenting.com.
Dr. Buck, thank you very much for joining us. Nice talking to you, ma'am.
Thank you. It was lovely talking with you as well. I appreciated our spirited discussion.
Me too, ma'am. Take care of yourself, and thanks very much.
Okie doke.
Bye-bye now. Exonation, my guest this hour was Dr. Nancy S. Buck. Her website, once again, is www.peacefulparenting.com. That's www.peacefulparenting.com. Well, that's it for tonight, everyone. Wow, another 4 hours has come and gone. I'll be back tomorrow as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And until tomorrow at 10 o'clock, always remember, take care of each other. And always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.